The following is paid for by Jacob Media Partners. Information on the program is intended to solely further the public's general knowledge about the product. Opinions expressed should not be relied upon for any purpose by any member of the audience. News Radio KDKA does not guarantee the accuracy of any of the information aired on the following program.
Now on 100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA. It's Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause.
As we come on the air tonight, Sunday night, June 11th, 2023, the striking Post-Gazette workers are now in their 8th month of the walkout in protest to the Block Communications group that owns the paper. The workers remain stronger than ever in their fight. And tonight, here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor, as we broadcast to you on KDKA, we're going to do a sequential timeline of conversation with some of the workers, some of the political leaders, some of the union leaders. We'll look back on April 18th when striking workers found themselves in an altercation. We'll tell you and remind you about unionprogress.com. And we'll update you on the very latest actions taken by the court in favor of the striking Post-Gazette workers. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause as we broadcast to you here on a Sunday night on KDKA 100.1 FM, 1020 AM. Our opening segment tonight takes us back to March 19th, a conversation that I had with Congressman Deluzio, who represents the 17th District. Ed, welcome into Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the facts outlined so the listening audience, Ed, has a little bit of a history. I know that we're north of 100 days on this strike, but give the audience an overview of where this thing started and bring us up to speed.
Thanks, Krause. So we're well over that now. The strike began on October 6th for the production units, and then we were joined by our guild brothers and sisters after that once they completed a labor board hearing, which you'll hear more about the favorable decision they received there. So this problem actually began when the contract expired in 2017. Leading into that renegotiation, the company brought back a law firm, King & Ballou, which is notorious for a union-busting law firm, and apparently sold the company a bill of goods, or the company asked for the bill to be sold to them to try to break these unions. When they came in there in the negotiations, in every unit they made proposals that they knew no union could agree with, and we've been in this battle with them since 2017. What precipitated the problem with the healthcare is in 2020 when they imposed a contract on the guild, therefore taking them out of the Teamsters Health and Welfare Plan that all of us were in up until that point. That caused a spike in the healthcare costs for the rest of us, and then the culmination was in October of 2022 when the Teamsters put us out of the fund because the company refused to pay the increase. That was then confirmed by the labor board in the trial that the guild had by issuing a decision against the company and finding them guilty on all counts of bargaining in bad faith, improperly imposing the contract on them, and directing them to reinstate the guild's contract as well as the Teamster Health and Welfare Benefit Fund. Yeah, when you put the guild back in the fund, the rest of us go in there as a larger pool. The costs come down. It eliminates the problem we were facing, was precipitated them not paying and them locking us out in the strike.
Yeah, we'll get more on that ruling. As you mentioned, Ed, John Schlois, who's the president of the Newspaper Guild, will join us in the next segment. The Post-Gazette is owned, as mentioned, by Block Communications. what has been the position of Block Communications, Ed? It doesn't sound to be a favorable one towards the workers. It doesn't sound to be a favorable one towards the current negotiations. Talk about that a little bit.
So apparently the company, the two owners, the Block brothers, John Robinson Block in Pittsburgh and Alan Block in Toledo, Ohio, have allowed these two attorneys to run the process for them, even if they run it into the ground. And that's where we're seeing it now. There's been no engagement by the two owners. We have requested the federal mediators go to the owners and get them directly involved in these negotiations, because left up to the attorneys in the room, there is no negotiation. The position of these attorneys is it's their way or the highway, and as of October 6th, with no health care, the production units took the highway, and our guild brothers and sisters joined us shortly thereafter.
Ed Mooney joining us. He's the Vice President, District 213. I want to ask you, Ed, about an altercation that occurred just last weekend, on location. Talk about that, and what details do you know, or better yet, what details can you share about the altercation after it occurred?
So the altercation occurred at a distribution center on Carson Street in Pittsburgh, where a scab driver that the company has employed since the beginning of the strike assaulted two of our picketing members who happen to be members of the Teamsters. And right now, our understanding is the district attorney is looking into those issues and trying to retrieve the video of that incident. For the video we've seen so far, at least that I've seen personally, shows the scab truck driver is the one who initiated the confrontation by striking our picketer first, struck one of them, when another one went in to assist them or to break it up. He then struck that person, and our understanding now is the district attorney's office is looking into that altercation, and we're confident that they will do their job in sorting out the facts there and take whatever action is necessary against the driver and against the Post-Gazette. The Post-Gazette has been doing this. This is all part of their plan, which is to pit one worker against another, right? This goes all the way back to the old industrialist Jay Gould, who's coined the phrase, what management wants is to hire one half of the working class to kill the other half. So they hired this individual by offering him the promise and the moon and the stars to be a strike breaker. While he's there being the strike breaker, the pressure builds up on that individual to the point where he snaps. He snapped, assaulted two of our picketers, and now the company will step back and point fingers and blame it on somebody else. But the ultimate responsibility for this, for the entire conflict that we're having now, lies squarely at the feet of John Robinson Block and Alan Block and the board of directors of Block Communications. They have engaged these attorneys to orchestrate exactly this reign of terror on their employees for whatever reason, God only knows. Just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we had two members retire on a picket line, two mailers who retired after 46 years of service each to this newspaper, and they spent their last 140-something days on a picket line. That's what this comes down to. Their blatant disdain for their employees, and it's being carried out in the streets of Pittsburgh in these confrontations.
Ed, let me use the last minute and a half that we have to ask you about the support. A little bit later on in the show, Congressman Kristen Deluzio will join us. The mayor of Pittsburgh is supporting the workers who are out on strike.
So the support we're getting throughout the Allegheny County area has been tremendous. The support for the workers, absent the people they've been able to convince to insert themselves into this dispute, everyone else has been favorable. The Labor Council, the Allegheny County Fayette Labor Council, has been tremendous. The politicians in the city of Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas have been fantastic. You'll hear more from Congressman Deluzio later about that. But you couldn't ask for more support than we have. The problem is there is zero interaction with the owners of this company, and somebody needs to bring them to the table and hold them accountable for what they're doing, right? There is absolutely no reason for any of this. They have told us from the beginning they want to transition from a print publication to a digital publication. Well, I'm not an expert on the newspaper industry, but if you want to have a successful digital newspaper, my understanding would be you need to have good quality journalists who are confident in their jobs and want to work there to do the best job. And you already heard, and you'll hear more from my counterpart, John Sloyce, after this in the next segment about how they treated the journalists. So the bill of goods they were sold by this law firm, or their thinking, which is clearly backwards, needs to be addressed, and they need to come to the table to resolve this dispute immediately. They have tried everything they could. They're suing the city of Pittsburgh. They're suing the police department. They're using the state government, the federal government. They're threatening Findlay Township out in Clinton, where the production facility is. They will stop at nothing and spend the taxpayers' money having to defend frivolous lawsuits and other things in their pursuit of whatever it is against these workers. So the support we've been getting everywhere has been tremendous, and from the customers who have canceled, from the advertisers who have canceled their advertisements. Now we just need somebody to bring these owners to the table and get them to change their strategy to bring this to a successful conclusion.
We'll try and do it on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. That's Ed Mooney, Vice President, District 213. We'll get to our first commercial break here on 100.1 FM, AM 1020. KDKA.
This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause.
And back here on this Sunday night on Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause as we broadcast to you on KDKA. We thank everybody for tuning in over the last 12 or 13 weeks. You've heard me reference unionprogress.com. What is it? Unionprogress.com is a strike paper that is being created and pushed out by the veteran Pittsburgh journalist covering, continue to work and provide coverage. That is unionprogress.com. We'll hear more about unionprogress.com a little bit later on in tonight's show. Now, here in segment 2, we're going to go back to April 18th, where the striking Post-Gazette workers on a Wednesday night at around 11 p.m. found themselves in an altercation, just standing up for their rights. Kristen Affrime, the CWA staff representative who was on the scene on Wednesday night in front of the Post-Gazette building where the story unfolded, a normal nightly routine with the workers marching in solidarity turned and got ugly on Wednesday night. We got Kristen's perspective because she was there on the ground. We have a call into the mayor of Pittsburgh, Mayor Gainey, and we hope to get Ed Gainey on one of the upcoming shows. I did mention ACLC President, which is the Allegheny Fayette Central Labor Council President, Darren Kelly, released a statement following the actions of Wednesday night, and I'm going to read, I'm going to quote him directly. Was hoping to get Darren Kelly on, but in the absence of him saying it, I'm going to actually read verbatim from the statement from the Labor Council President, Darren Kelly. The incident last night was just the latest proof of what we've been saying for weeks. This conflict is escalating every single day, and it will continue to escalate until someone intervenes and forces the Post-Gazette and the Block family to negotiate in good faith. Still quotes from Darren Kelly. Our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, the Teamsters, and CWA keep going back to the table only to find the Blocks smirking back at them and saying, take it or leave it. They refuse to negotiate, and they sit back and laugh as chaos ensues. Third quote, third paragraph, third quote from President Darren Kelly. We've seen multiple fights between scabs and striking workers. We've seen pepper spray deployed against striking workers, and we've seen people almost get run over by trucks. This cannot continue. This is 2023, not 1892. We've done our part and gone to the table time and time again. Now we need someone to step in immediately and force the blocs to negotiate in good faith before someone gets seriously hurt, unquote. Those are the exact quotes, the three statements from Labor Council President Darren Kelly following the incident that occurred on Wednesday night outside of the Post-Gazette. And again, special thanks to Kristen Affrime, a CW staff representative who was on location. If you go to unionprogress.com, you'll see some of the posts, video posts from Wednesday night. There were multiple video posts that were pushed out. Unionprogress.com is the strike paper where the interim editor, Bob Batch Jr., is going to join me on the other side of the break. We're going to spend the last two segments of this show today in Pittsburgh Labor talking about unionprogress.com. It is an incredible digital paper for you to get news, and it is worth familiarizing yourself with unionprogress.com. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. Dr. Krause as we broadcast to you tonight on KDKA 100.1 FM, 1020 AM. As we go to the break, I want to emphasize one of the three bullet points that were listed in ACLC President Darren Kelly's press release following the incident that occurred in front of the Post-Gazette building. Our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, this is a quote, our brothers and sisters from the News Guild, the Teamsters, and CWA keep going back to the table, only to find the blocs smirking back at them and saying, take it or leave it. They refuse to negotiate, and they sit back and laugh as chaos ensues. Statement words from Labor Council President Darren Kelly. This is Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J. Dr. Krause. I'm Joe Krause, broadcasting to you on KDKA on the other side of the break. Unionprogress.com. What is it? Who's responsible for it? And what does it mean? Back in a moment.
The following is paid for by Jacob Media Partners.
Back to Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause.
And welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Today in Pittsburgh Labor. I thank you for tuning in on this Sunday night, Sunday, June 11th, as we get ready to click into June 12th and start to approach next Sunday, which is Father's Day. Don't forget to tune right back in here on Sunday. We'll have the very latest next week from Ed Mooney, CWA Vice President, District 213 will join us. He will update us on the very latest. There has been some movement on the healthcare issue, and also we may have a big announcement coming up next week, so stick around for that or tune back in for that. That's next Sunday, which happens to be Father's Day. As we continue to roll along and look over this sequential timeline, just a week ago, the president of the AFL-CIO, Angela Ferritto, joined us, celebrating her 1 year as the president of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO, representing 400,000 union workers. She talked about, in one of our segments, she talked about the support that's out there for the striking workers.
Yeah, absolutely. These workers, what they're doing and what they've been doing, right, is standing up and fighting for their fair share. right? Their fair share of the profits that they are making, this corporation. And they're using the power of organized labor to combat the power of organized greed. And that is something that is, it's a fundamental freedom in the United States to be able to do that. And the fact that they've taken it on, to me, is such a righteous fight. And, the power that they're showing by standing the line and holding out one more day, I think is a testament to what you can do when you decide to stand up and fight for your fair share.
One of the constant themes in this struggle for the Post-Gazette workers and the multiple unions that are being represented that are on strike is the flat-out determination by ownership to bust the union. And I wonder how you feel about that. I mean, we use this platform to change the narrative and to educate the public about how powerful it is to be a member of a union, how protected you are when you are a member of a union. And yet corporations, in this particular case, the ownership group of the Post-Gazette, they want to break the union.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that they do, right, is because the power that workers have when they stand collectively in a union, right, it levels the playing field. And this is something that the labor movement has been saying for years. It's why it's so important that we have a voice in the legislative world, in the political world, right? For us to have a voice in those worlds, it's not about the politics of it, right? It's about the policy of it. And frankly, these corporations have spent years attacking and manipulating and fracturing our labor laws. And that's why we do what we do in those worlds every single day, right? Is to try to level that playing field, is trying to rewrite the rules so that workers in America can have a fair fight. And one of the things that we've been fighting for at the national level is the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which would level that playing field when it comes to workers organizing, right? Because not only are corporations fighting back against workers who already have representation, but they're fighting even harder to stop more workers from organizing and to make it harder for more workers to be able to get representation and use their collective voice. And so that's really, everything we fight for as a movement is focused on ensuring that we protect and expand worker and union protections, honestly, so that more of our families and friends can prosper, because we know the power that the union brings, and we know the power that workers can have when they are represented.
I know in our last segment, which was our first segment, you had talked about the power of 700,000 workers being under your leadership. And boy, I will tell you, I truly feel as though in some way, shape, or form that 700,000 are supporting the Post-Gazette workers, either in spirit, either physically, either driving to join a picket line, whatever the case may be. We've had so much support and so much conversation across the spectrum in support of the Post-Gazette workers. And Angela, I've got to say, I think that's an exclamation point to what you've been saying during our conversation today about the power of being in a union.
Absolutely. There is a power that comes from solidarity. And even though someone may not be standing right next to you, that person is still standing with you. And that solidarity, that strength in numbers, that is that is really what fuels our movement, and that is where the strength of our movement comes from.
Angela Ferritto, kind enough to join us today. She's the president of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. Last message from you, Angela, before I let you go. And again, thank you very much for being with us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Take 30 or 45 seconds, or as long as you would like, to just send a message to the Post-Gazette workers who listen to this show religiously, weekly, in some ways are inspired by the messaging, in some ways work through some struggles because of this show. And I think it would be important, I'd love for them to hear from you as that when they tune into the show.
Well, I would just say, one day stronger, one day longer. This is a righteous fight that you are taking on, and you're standing up for what is right and what you deserve. And, it to a point is the right that you have to do this as a collective. And there's a lot of workers out there that would never get the chance to stand up and fight like they are. But just know that we are all with you. We are supporting you, whether it be in person or through spirit or through, monetary donations. But together, we can continue to create a better world through the union movement. We're improving life and improving families through stability and fighting for improving outcomes, right? These are the pillars of the union movement. And we'll remain laser focused on them, and we'll continue to support you, whether it be near or far. And just know that you're not alone. Everybody is with you and cheering you on, and that's 700,000 strong.
Wow, great stuff. Great message, Angela Ferritto, president of the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO. By the way, if you're listening and you heard Angela's reference or message of support, and you're a listener out there in the KDKA audience, go to unionprogress.com. It's the digital strike paper. You'll read and hear a lot of great stories written by some of the incredible veteran Pittsburgh journalists that are originally part of the Post-Gazette. As that strike continues on, Angela's words are out there. Go to unionprogress.com. Angela Ferritto, great stuff. Congrats on 1 year in the books. Year two's already underway. Already underway, and I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
All right, great stuff. We'll take a break here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor.
It's Today in Pittsburgh Labor with J-Doc and Krause.
And back here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor on KDKA. Thanks, everyone, for continuing to tune in to Today in Pittsburgh Labor. We love joining you every Sunday night, and we love our time slot because we officially end your week here on a Sunday and transition you into Monday morning, and hopefully we continue to ask the listening audience to hold closely all of the striking workers from the Post-Gazette across multiple unions who continue to fight for their rights. That strike now, as you know, which started back in October of 2022, now moving into its 8th month. And what an incredible timeline, what an incredible challenge, what an incredible battle it has been, what an incredible test of perseverance it has been for all of the workers on strike. And I hope tonight's show, with snippets from different interviews that we've had over the last 13 weeks, has helped you get a better understanding of how difficult this strike has been, and more importantly, or equally as important, how unfair the owners of the Post-Gazette have been towards the workers, generational workers. I keep hearing my conversation with Hutchie from just last week, rather, and you heard Hutchie referenced in our opening segment tonight by Congressman Deluzio, who had him at the State of the Union address in D.C. The support that is there from the Pittsburgh community is incredible, yet Block Communication refuses to get this strike settled. It is absolutely, absolutely amazing and incredible that we're still having that conversation. So I thought the best thing to do tonight, the best way to end the show, is to give you a better look at unionprogress.com. I mentioned it back in segment 2 tonight. Chris Mellon, or Steve Mellon, rather, is going to join us and talk about unionprogress.com. Here's some of that conversation with Steve.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate being here. And I appreciate the good work you've been doing here.
Spent a lot of time on the show last week making the big audience here on KDKA familiar with Union Progress, the paper that's being published by the striking workers from the Post-Gazette. And as I continue to read the incredible work that's being done, Steve, I read the article that you published back at the end of January, Sleepless Nights, Dashed Dreams, Pastor Identifies Strikers' Anxieties and Offers Hope. And I thought it was relevant to bring that article back to life and put it in radio form a little bit and have you talk about that. I hope you're good with that. I think the timing, as this thing stretches on, the article even becomes more relevant instead of becoming less of a story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, that rally, I remember that rally day very well. It was kind of a chilly day, but it was sunny. And you know, we had a lot of speakers up that day that were building up spirits, lifting people up. You know, a lot of the rah-rah stuff that you typically have. Of course, you know, the mayor came up and as always, you know, he always delivers on getting everybody's spirits up. But when it was toward the end when Reverend Cobb stepped up and spoke, and I'd spoken to him the night before, and he kind of asked me where we were at. I said, "Well, look, it's been just 100 days, and you know that initial enthusiasm that everybody felt when we first walked out. You know, we were all fired up. We were taking a stand. We felt we were standing up for ourselves and for our colleagues, our coworkers, for future generations of journalists, and that all felt really good. But you know, that emotional high, you know, that dissipates. You know, we for the first several weeks there was a lot of work to do with Health and Welfare Committee. I'm co-chair of the Health and Welfare Committee. You know, we were setting up a strike fund and getting people signed up for unemployment. You know, we were making sure everybody had health care of some form. And other committees were setting up actions, and there was a lot of work to do. But, you know, after some of these things got set up and we kind of fell into a routine, you know, you have these moments where, you lay in bed at night and you wonder, what the hell's going on? You know, I'm not working. I'm not, don't have any money. You don't have this daily structure that your life normally has when you're working. You know, you get up on Monday morning, you go to work, and you put in 5 good days, and you feel good at the end of the week. You can have a weekend, you know, you can celebrate, you can pop a beer, you can go hang out with your friends, spend time with your family, and, you know, feel like you're having a normal life. And all that goes away with a strike. There's some very important things that need to be done and that you do when you're on strike, but you do have those moments when you know, your life just seems like it's turned upside down.
I was going to say, you know, life gets in the way. You know, part of going to work every day is to be able to author what your life is supposed to be or what you want it to be, and then it gets in the way, and that's hard. That's exactly
right. And you know, there's this sense that the world's moving on without you. And I say there's a sense of that, Joe, because and I try to tell my colleagues this because I spend a lot of time on the phone with people who are struggling with this, and especially younger people who have not been through something like this before. There will be a point when this is over, and this will be a moment in our lives that actually carries some real meaning, that has some actual depth of meaning to our lives, and will shape us in very positive ways. It's hard to see that when you're in the middle of it, though. And that's what was so important about when Vincent got up to speak at that rally. I know this is going through everybody's head because he and I talked the night before. He asked me where people at, and I told him. I said, this is a real struggle for people. And so when he started to address these issues directly, it really got quiet. There wasn't any of the cheering or the chanting or any of that. It was quiet. You could have heard a pin drop down there because he was directly addressing many of these issues that people were dealing with. And I think that really resonated with people. I think it resonated that we had someone here who was a very highly respected member, a leader in Pittsburgh's faith community. People know Vince. I mean, he's very actively involved in these interfaith efforts here. He's a big supporter of working people, of labor, and people know that. And to have somebody like that stand up and say, I know this is what you're dealing with. I recognize that. And that was important. That was important to just pretending that these things don't exist does not help.
Talking with Steve Mellon, who's joining us here on Today in Pittsburgh Labor as we broadcast to you on KDKA. Speaking of the Reverend Dr. Vincent Cobb from the Sixth Presbyterian Church in Squirrel Hill will join us. And then a little bit later on, before we say goodbye on KDKA, Joe Barbero from Teamsters Local 205 will jump on board and give us an update. Steve, couple of minutes left in the segment. And again, I appreciate you coming on and being a part of Today in Pittsburgh Labor. Give me your perspective. You had some real defined words in our brief interview about how challenging it can be, and for each individual the challenge is different. The cross is heavy, depending on who you are in your own circumstance. How do you get through it?
Well, I take these little things that people say to me. I had a conversation with some folks at the United Steelworkers yesterday, a couple days ago. We were talking about the Workers' Memorial Day that's tomorrow, and they were talking about some of the things that their affiliates were doing in preparation for that. And one of the organizations, one of those younger leaders of one of these organizations, was telling me about her involvement in this, and I was taking notes. And then after we went through the formal interview, she said to me, she said, Steve, she said, we're watching you guys. We're paying attention to what you guys are doing, and we really appreciate the stand you're taking. And we're inspired by that. That carries me for a couple of days, Joe. I mean, I can ride on that. When Vincent stood up and said that, he said, that that we're building, he addressed this idea that our resumes were kind of static, that, we weren't working in a newspaper and building a clips that's really important for some of the younger folks. But he says, right now, he said, you have a chance to build your resume, but it's your eulogy that you're building now. Eulogy virtues, he called them. And, these are the things they talk about at your funeral. Whether you were kind or brave or honest or faithful or what kind of human beings we were to one another. And that's always in the back of my mind. I'm always thinking about, I'm 63 years old, so I'm always thinking about my legacy. What are people going to say about me when this is all over? What are my kids going to say about me?
Yeah, my mother used to say to me when I was young, when you leave this world, son, what will they say? And it is so true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I can leave you guys with something that Vince said. He said, and this is a quote from that day. It's one of the last things he said. He said, "I get up every morning and I remind myself, Vincent, you are warmed by fires you did not build. You are refreshed by wells you did not dig, and you are shaded by trees that you did not plant." So he looked out at us and he said, "And I want to thank all of you newspaper workers who have been out on strike at this point for 100 days, because you have been a strong link in the chain for the rest of us." And when we're struggling with all these things, one of the big focuses of Workers' Memorial Day tomorrow is mental health. And when you reach these moments where it seems like the world is moving on without us, it's not. People, we're right there with it. As a matter of fact, I think that my on strike right now is at the forefront of a movement. It's hard to see that when you're in the middle of it, and we need people like Vincent and our colleagues like you and other people to just remind us on occasion that that we're seen, that we're recognized, that this action that we're taking, the stand that we've taken, is not forgotten.
That's going to bring this edition of Today in Pittsburgh Labor to a close on this Sunday night, Monday morning. As we end here on KDKA, I want to thank all of our listeners who continue to tune in on a Sunday night, and ask you to join us again 1 week from tonight, next Sunday, which will be Father's Day. We'll get an update again from Ed Mooney, District 213 Vice President, will join us. And also perhaps a big announcement coming on some great progress, a great win for the workers who are out on strike. We'll see if all of that materializes. On behalf of all of the workers who are on strike, all of the Post-Gazette workers who continue to stand up for what they believe in, I'm Joe Kraus. See you next time, everybody.